welcome back to the FNZ 90+3 podcast, where three football supporters take a look into the dressing room, chatting to former professional footballers about their experiences on and off the pitch. I'm your host, Ashley Symonds. Production of our new live show, the FNZ Football Show, is now up and running. So make sure you follow us on all platforms for latest news and views as they happen. Tonight, I'm joined once again by Tux and Becks. Lads, how are we doing?
Yeah, good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, Becks has got his home shirt on there this week.
Yeah, the old faithful, love them or hate them. But we got them on there. We got it on there.
Well, you know, we were loyalists, weren't we? So we stick by the club. Hold on, look, my missus just brought in my dinner, boys. Look at this. First 5-star service. Cheers, babe. Well, look at that. Look, can't moan about that, can you? Right. Anyway, let's get on to it. Tonight, we're joined by a player who we all know very well. Once described as a strong and very quick striker, but with no mean skill. He scored over 102 goals, league goals within a career that saw him also feature for his country. It's Alan Lee. Alan, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no sweat at all. So, Al, as you're new to the show, you won't be familiar with the format, so let me just set the scene for you. Just imagine you're in a pub and you've had one too many beers and you need one of us three to buy you another one. Yeah. You've got to share your best stories with us so that we can get you another pint. Is that okay?
I'll try. I'll try. I promise.
All right, brilliant. So Tux is going to take us away with the questions. Go ahead, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Ash. Alan, thanks again for coming on the 90+3 series. Many of our listeners will know you well from particular spells with the likes of Rotherham United, Cardiff City, Crystal Palace, the Dirty Budgies, Huddersfield Town, and of course our wonderful Ipswich Town. I think it's fair to say it's going to be interesting to hear your reasons for joining Norwich City, which I'm sure Becks will enjoy later. But before we come into your career highlights in more detail, take us back to your childhood memories surrounding football, perhaps with family or watching games as a child. Where did the love of football come for you? Where did it start off?
Basically with my father in the back garden. So my father was very sporty, grew up in farming country in the west of Ireland where there's no football clubs or football, but he always used to listen to the football results come in a crackly old radio and had a love for the game. So from when I could walk, I remember him being my only friend and playing in the back garden with him constantly. When I was 5, I remember him, I was 4 or 5, he brought me down to, we were living in Dublin in the city at that point, brought me down to the local football club. And I don't believe they really catered for people that young, but I was quite a big boy. And we thought, I had my first pair of football boots. I remember them. They were almost like, they were Adidas molded, 3 yellow stripes. And we went down to the session and it was too much for me and I came back crying. So next year we tried again. And I think from a really early age, I was playing kind of well above my age group. And playing before school, at lunchtime, in the 5-minute break, after school, and then morning, noon, at night, and the weekends. So, but I remember specifically that first day going to join Granada Football Club in Foxrock in Dublin.
So was there maybe like a team that you supported, obviously growing up in London, in Ireland, whether it be an English team or maybe an Irish, maybe like Celtic or Rangers or something like that? Was there a team that you followed as a youngster?
It's funny, in my class or school, or anyone I knew, you either followed Liverpool or Man United. You very rarely would you hear anyone. You might support Celtic as well, but you weren't really as aware of Celtic at that age. Everything was Liverpool or Man United. And at that time, Liverpool won everything. But I supported Man United and I wanted to beat Brian Robson.
So football was very much, something that you and your family kind of focused on from a very young age. So was what was your involvement with your dad, in terms of his, him supporting the club, football clubs or anything like that? I mean, what was it that he gave you personally that made your career that more special?
Well, first of all, we never, no one from my background at home had ever made it, or it's very rare in, where we lived. And, it's very rare kids go over from Ireland and make it as a professional footballer. You have to bear in mind, in the UK, there's so many clubs around, and there's an intake of 10, 12 boys into every academy year. So it's quite common you'd know someone. We didn't know anyone. We never approached sport as a career. I just had parents who loved sport and were prepared to drive me here, there, and everywhere. And, I guess I was the focus of their weekends, what game I was playing in, where we're going, and we're going to pick up other boys. So a load of support. My father was very level-headed, unlike me. My mum would give me a few bollockings, but my dad was very, very level-headed, and we'd no intention, or we'd no kind of even awareness that this could turn into a career.
Yeah, I think like many of the footballers we've spoken to in recent weeks, a player's youth career isn't always plain sailing, I suppose. So while doing my research, I noticed that you were at Aston Villa as a kid. So talk to me about the very early part of your career, especially coming through, from Ireland and I think it was Galway you was born in, I think it was.
Yeah.
And adjusting to life in England after that as well. So just take me through, your career, your very early part of that.
Well, I guess at about 14, scouts started asking me over, and I went to about 3 or 4 clubs, failed at Nottingham, went to Nottingham Forest first, failed, went to Man United, thought I did very well, but they didn't ask me back. I went to Oldham, did very well, and they offered me something, but again, we thought, no, I'm going back to education. Then Aston Villa offered me a contract, and I really loved going to Aston Villa. And for the next couple of years, I'd go there every school holidays. I think when I was 16, they offered me a contract, which we turned down. We thought, no, we're going to finish education. Are you mad? And then Ron Atkinson came to the house and had a really lovely chat to mum and dad and said, listen, he's got a 4-year deal. He can leave at any time. We will continue his education. So that year was kind of in a gap year at school. And off I went. I honestly thought, in my head, I was treating it like another sports club you might go to for a week, or I used to play a lot of tennis tournaments. You'd go away for a week and play a tennis tournament. In my head, it never really dawned on me. And with that in mind, my first year, 18 months, I was awful. I was so unprofessional, didn't understand about working hard, thought the coach was on my back the whole time, just nagging me to work hard. If I wasn't playing well, I had no respect from the other players. But the coach was brilliant. He just kept on at me. He kept on at me and on at me. But then he did a very clever thing. One time he took me off after about 20 minutes of a game. We were playing Peterborough United away. And rather than giving me a bollocking this time, he said, sit down there, Alan. Well done, well done. And the next week I was away in international duty and I got sent off. And the look of horror in my parents' face, and I hit out at someone really stupid, and I'd let them down. And I came back thinking, do you know what? I've just been messing around here. I have a chance to become a professional footballer, but I'm going to go back to Dublin a failure when my contract ends, and that's the pathway I'm on. So I changed my whole attitude. I stopped looking for excuses. I went in earlier than everyone else, and I stayed later than everyone else. And I picked up every bib, cone. I did everything right and just worked harder, and everything changed. People's attitudes to me changed. My performances changed and scored more goals, and I was more fulfilled, and I kind of came out of my shell and more confident, and the rest is history.
So, Alan, you joined Rotherham in November 2000 for a fee of 150 grand at the time. This is very much a club you made your name at, scoring 41 goals in 122 appearances. Personally, you had 3 successful seasons there with the Millers, in which you gained promotion to what is now known as the Championship. So firstly, could you tell us what it was like to go from playing in the old second division to the first division at the time?
You probably similar to what to now, even you just up against so many bigger clubs. So there's in the championship, or back then we'll call it the championship. In the championship, there's not many weak players. In any team. In Div 1, there's a lot of weaker players. There's a lot of players you can get at, or that the team's carrying. You get really good teams who make up for that. But the championship is, what it's like as fans. If you go into Leicester City or Man City, as they were in the championship then, and full house and wonderful old stadium, you don't need to get yourself roused, going for the game. So I loved playing for Rotherham United. Everyone we played, we were the underdogs, which was no pressure for me. When you're in Div 1, when you're playing a Northampton Town or something at home, you expect to win. And then, if it's not going your way, the fans get a bit mean. But I just loved playing, at the bigger clubs.
Yeah, 100% agree. Obviously, I don't want to skip over your time at Rotherham, because that was the shaping of you, but you were doing so well at the time, the ripe old age of 25, you were snapped up by Cardiff City. Tell us how the move came about and your reasons behind the move.
It was I had interest. It's funny, I didn't have an agent. I was never properly signed with an agent, but people were approaching me and telling me clubs were interested in. I guess financially, I thought I knew they were turning down bids, but I had a year left on my contract. So the Cardiff was a very definite bid, and one of the directors I'd kind of had a meeting about, and one of the directors said, listen, we've worked out you're probably the difference between us staying in the championship or not, and that's worth more than £1 million to us, money-wise. So we think we'll just keep you for the year and let you go on a free. I'm saying, so you're not offering me a new contract? Well, no, because we can't really afford to offer you something that you'd sign. So I'm saying, well, how am I going to feel playing that this year, knowing that if I get injured, I'm without a contract? And, this is typical of football clubs that, very often the people running them don't have the perspective, have no grasp of the perspective. So I said, well, that's just not acceptable. You've got to understand that's, how am I going to be preparing for games knowing that if something goes wrong, I'm in serious trouble here. But I went to see the owner, who is a wonderful old boy, scrap metal merchant, or Magnus. And he said, listen, I'll stop you there. Do you want me to sell you? I said, yes, please. I think it's time to go. No problem. You've been wonderful for us, so we'll do the deal. And he was good to his word.
Cool. You don't hear much of that. We've spoken to many players who've all had similar, endings with regards to clubs, and never have they had it where an owner has actually just turned around and said, here you go. But obviously, you've gone to Cardiff, and around a similar time, you've made your debut for the Republic of Ireland. You've managed to make 10 appearances. I mean, is that a dream come true?
Obviously, massive moment. But again, it came for me too early in my career. I felt, I never felt at that age I was good enough. If I'd done my debut 3 or 4 years later, I'd have felt I deserved it. I'd have known what I was doing. I'd have really been conscious of what I'm good and bad at, and that I deserved to be there. At that stage, I just didn't have that self-belief. So I never played well for the Republic of Ireland. I worked hard. I started some games, but I never felt myself there. I never felt comfortable. Huge honour. Meant so much to me and my family that I got there. Just kind of wished I'd given a better account to myself.
Yeah, so obviously at the time, your former manager, Ronnie Moore, once said, Alan Lee can and will do better than Cardiff. And we know you struggled with injuries during that period. Is that the reason why you joined the mighty Ipswich Town then? Or?
Yeah, I started well for Cardiff, and then the knee injury that I had at Burnley reoccurred. And it took 3 operations to sort out. And again, I came back. probably too early. When you're a striker and you don't hit the ground running at a club, it's very hard to turn it around. Because you don't just have to play well, you have to score goals and you have to be confident. Self-belief is everything. So I huffed and puffed. I had a really good relationship with the Cardiff fans. They could see I worked hard, but never quite. I never felt they saw the best of me, just in flashes.
I can remember the first time I saw you, Alan, and that was in a Cardiff shirt. And I remember the performance you put in, specifically at Portman Road. Cardiff came down, and I think it was 2004, 2005. Joe Royal would have been in charge at the time. And you came down with Cardiff and you lost 3-1 on the day, but you scored. And I remember the performance you put in, because I think you ran like the pitch length and then buried it in the bottom corner. And I remember everyone in the whole stadium just going silent because, it took some kind of player to do that. So, when it came round to it, you were a good player at the time. It was just your stock was down because of injuries. Would you agree?
Definitely. And Cardiff had a lot of money to spend then. They'd had a cash injection. I think they brought, it might have been Sam Ricketts. Was it Sam Ricketts from, or Ricketts, the lad who played for England?
Michael Ricketts.
Michael Ricketts, yeah. Michael Ricketts, is it?
Yeah, I think so.
And I can't remember if it was before or after he played for England, but he was doing very well. There was Cameron Jerome. So, fair enough. But in terms of the club, when I heard it was Ipswich Town and it was Joe Royal, I kind of like that. That gave me such a boost because I felt, right, if I did well at Cardiff, I might end up at somewhere like Ipswich. And I hadn't really done that well. And, I was a lucky boy. But Joe had told me that they'd, I think Steve McCall had told him I was too slow. And they got the stats up, and I was the fastest centre forward to play at the Portman Road the season, at the highest top speed of any centre forward who played. So that was the thing. But certainly at that age, I was a 100-metre runner. I had a top speed that I was exceptionally fast until old age and takes its toll. It's just when you're that big, you don't turn that quick. You can't defy the laws of physics. So I took a huge boost and went straight through the door at Ipswich and just settled like snow. Loved the lads, loved the atmosphere. I loved Joe Royal. The way we played football was exciting, but it was a really good to be a centre forward in the team. You got chances, and we played good football. But they hit. If the ball down the sides was on, they'd hit it. They'd hit the centre forward. It was, and some really good players, really, really good players. So I loved it.
Yes. So why do you think the move to Town reignites your career? I mean, 17 goals in your first season, including your second career hat-trick.
It's just one of those things. As I said, you get off to a good start. It's huge for centre forward. I love living in Suffolk. I just felt at home. Whereas I think when I moved to Cardiff were training in the middle of an athletics field, with cones out where the shot put holes were. And, the nightlife was, living in a city, nightlife every Saturday out, it was too much of a distraction for me. So I never really settled in a nice, focused, healthy home life. Whereas in Suffolk, everything's a bit slower. You'd go, rather than going into a nightclub on a Saturday with the boys, you just go down the local pub and it's nice and quiet. And, it's just everything about it, the pace of life, just probably felt like I was back at home.
Yeah, and I mean, you had some memorable times, definitely for Ipswich Town, and we can all vouch for that. But I always remember the one. What about the header that you scored against Leeds to relegate Leeds United? I mean, you've got some balls out. Celebrating that goal virtually meant nothing to us at all. Tell us about that day and what you can remember.
Yeah, I suppose I have a bit of that in me. If I can cause a bit of bollocks, so I'd feed off the opposition hating me or the crowds, so I'd love nothing else but than being booed or summoned by the opposition, because I think, I realise I'm not an aggressive person. I'm really, I'm not like that. On the pitch, I need to be. And I realised I needed to be. So, I'd have to find ways to get angry, to get the adrenaline going, to really get focused. And that was kind of so it was kind of, you don't think of consequences or, respect for the opposition. I'd have none of that. So when I score that goal, it's a goal that counts. And whatever the game is, if you score a goal that's count, you celebrate it, and it might be your last. Might be your last important goal. So I didn't know what was coming.
It could have been your last there, couldn't it? Ellen Road, all the fans coming on the pitch there. It could have been anything.
Interesting enough, I was by the tunnel, so I was out pretty quick. When the fans came on, and George O'Callaghan was telling me, it was funny because George was surrounded by some Leeds fans, and he was like, ready to go. And they go, "Don't worry, listen, we're not after you. We're after our players." So the boys never felt in danger. Or I'd say might have felt in danger, but I don't think the Leeds fans weren't after us. Interesting then in the dressing room, the break was about 45 minutes, and the fans had rushed on after Leeds had missed a shot and gone out for a goal kick. But when we came back on, the referee gave a corner. He'd forgotten what the decision was, so that was kind of, that was quite maddening. And I remember Gus Poyet that day was quite good, quite a gentleman, trying to calm everyone down, he was the Leeds assistant manager. I was quite impressed with him. But obviously then I heard the stories of fans afterwards got, a lot of objects thrown at them, and it wasn't a nice experience. So a bit disappointing.
Yeah, obviously your last season with Town, you made your final appearance in a 1-0 win against Hull City. And everyone remembers that one because you came on as a sub and you netted literally within a minute or two of coming on, I think it was. And you just gave us that last inch of hope that we were going to make it into the playoffs. Was that the kind of send-off you were hoping to give the fans? Did you know you were on your way out at the time?
I played a couple of games the next season, but by that stage I'd felt pretty aggrieved because I'd scored all these goals for the club. What people didn't know at the time was I started that season and I had 10 goals by, must have been October. I then developed a tendonitis in both Achilles tendons. So I played a string of games that I was absolutely in agony with. And we don't want to advertise that. The physio, Matt Byer, and I was saying, Matt, my tendons feel like they're going to snap at any minute. And he goes, I can't guarantee they're not, but we need you to play. And like some fans started getting on my back, and it was like, and Jim wasn't that supportive. It kind of, it wasn't acknowledged that, hold on a second, he's playing in serious pain. He's going, most people would just say, no, I'm not playing. So I must have had 5 or 6 weeks. We tried everything to get rid of it. And then it's funny, tendonitis can go as quickly as it comes. And I was kind of out of the team, and I felt, do you know what? I knew other people were getting new contracts, and I think the new owner might have taken over by then. I thought, hang on a second, I started the season on fire. I had tendonitis. I played through the pain, had to stop for a couple of games, but I felt, all of a sudden I'm being judged by maybe the staff and saying, oh, maybe he's lost his pace, and it wasn't the case at all. So I probably needed a bit more support then. And then I think Marcus Evans took over, and we were signing players, and I just felt like I was a bit old news. I think people after a few years, people start looking at what you can't do. So I was never going to drop into the holes and be really neat and nice. But what I had was a fantastic playing relationship with Pablo Canagu. And every striker, and to this day, every team needs a striker like what I did. It would do the jobs that would run and hassle. I I could hold the ball up, and I could do more than that, and I scored some good goals as well. So I think I gave very good value, but I felt possibly the new owner, new money. I think we're going to have a really fancy playing style, and we're going to be passing around now, and we're going to be really tippy tappy. I don't know, but I just felt, things changed. Things changed with the money. But I have huge respect for Jim Magilton. I don't think Jim didn't have much support at the time, and I think it was. I just felt I needed more people there. Really looked at what I could do rather than what I couldn't do.
This is going to be a bit like a Jeremy Kyle bit now. They've been holding me back out the back for a little while. They're going to let me loose. They give me the Norwich City bit. So, honestly, mate, I was absolutely gutted when you left Ipswich. You were one of my favourites. I was only 11 or 12 at the time, not to make you feel old or anything. But just talk us through how that move came to Palace. Neil Warnock was there at the time. I think they just finished in the playoffs the season you left us. What was the motivation of going to Palace?
How dare you ask me that? Only joking. So I moved to Palace, and I figured I'd go there, and I was a disaster the first season. I was crap. I was rubbish and didn't enjoy it. And I felt I probably left Ipswich for the wrong reasons, and was travelling up and down. And end of the season, the opportunity came on loan to Norwich. And for me, yes, probably part of my character is a bit of a, right, I'll call some bollocks here, but I wouldn't be afraid of causing, I wasn't at all afraid of upsetting people. There was an element, I hadn't had a great deal of loyalty when I was banging these goals and I was injured. I didn't get a great bit of loyalty. So, the club sold me, kind of wouldn't offer me a new deal, but offered players who were, weren't anywhere near as good as me or as much effect as me, new deals. So a bit of bitterness there. And most foremost was I got to live at home with who's my wife now and travel up every day. Listen, clubs are the first to get rid of you and ditch you when they don't need you. Norwich was, I'd have loved to sign for Norwich. And as it happened, I played bloody well for them. I did very well. I got player of the month, scored some goals, and I'd have happily stayed there, but it wasn't to be.
Yeah. Fortunately, you're the only one who was playing for them at the time, I think, because they obviously went down then. But
yeah, it was, and it gives you, this is one of the experiences you learn from football. The problem was loan players. So I went in there and I remember digging people out in that and a feeling that, I'm not saying these are bad lads at all, because some of them went on and had really good careers. There was too many loan players that I felt that the overriding impression in the dressing room was, a lot of the team here are going to be out of the, it doesn't really affect them. And I felt that was a problem. There was no doubt underneath that, behind them, there was really good quality there. I mean, Wes Hoolahan was injured, and that is a huge factor. Wes Hoolahan was frequently the best player in the championship, let me tell you. He was absolutely fantastic. So it doesn't surprise me it was no surprise to me that it came straight back up.
Yeah, obviously we know the man who's in charge of that at the time very well now. But going back to yourself, being at Palace at that time, was that move sort of your opportunity, thinking, you've come off, like you said, a good season at Ipswich and it didn't sort of end as how you'd have liked it to. Palace under Warnock, we all know what Neil Warnock's like, promotion specialist at the Championship. Was that a move you thought, I've got a real opportunity here where I could get into the Premier League?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, you back Neil Warnock, and I think as a player, probably, there's a few managers, a bit like Mick McCarthy. If he comes in for you as a player, you know the reputation he has. You speak to other players, people know. And although Neil Warnock is a totally different character, you know, you back him to get the best out of what he has. And it was, as I said, I was rubbish first season. Second season, I probably only got, I came on the first game because other people were injured, scored a winner or it might have been a winner or an equaliser. And I turned everyone around over the course of the season. And I was probably there at my proudest season in football.
Yeah. It was a difficult time towards the end at Palace. Obviously, I think they went into administration. There was some troubles off the field. But you were a key part on the pitch to keeping them up, and ultimately they've now reaped the rewards being in the Premier League. Just talk us through that final day where you scored the goal against Sheffield Wednesday.
This is where you experience, this is where you really start getting conscious. It was that season that it really brought home to me that I have the ability to affect others, and the other senior players have the ability to affect others. And even though we weren't getting paid and there was lots of excuses to down tools, we sold our best players, apart from Darren Ambrose. We kept him, luckily. But everyone rallied around. The players were absolutely amazing, and the power of the team and the way we policed ourselves and worked hard was absolutely amazing. And that last game of the season, it's funny that everything that got on had just united the fans. So the season before, the fans were a bit grumbly. Now the fans were right behind us. We were going to Hillsborough. We knew that we'd gone from a playoff position to relegation position because of no fault of our own, and the fans were right behind us. So we were playing, with a nice pressure, a nicer pressure than Sheffield Wednesday were playing under. And I've never seen so many TV cameras, and it was astonishing day, and a feeling of elation of afterwards. I didn't feel like celebrating. I was just crying and just kind of so proud of what we'd done. Because we were playing with players who should not have been out in the pitch. Players who are injured, players who are past it, but lifted their game. Wonderful characters.
Yeah, and like you said, I think it's something that's followed you through your career. Like maybe even when you haven't been in the best goal scoring form, I think your character and your attitude is something that's what a lot of fans have stuck onto. And your final club before you returned home to Ipswich was Huddersfield, where you also helped them get back into the Championship, which is where you finished your career. Just talk us about your time at Huddersfield. Obviously, we've interviewed Simon Grayson, who's a fantastic manager. Just talk us about that time there with Huddersfield.
Yeah, a club in massive transition. Wealthy owner, very ambitious. But when I signed there, we didn't have a training ground. We'd have to travel down to a pitch, and there were some things not right. Lee Clark was wonderful, really wonderful, great support network with him. Apart from, on a game day, he'd get too mad. He needed to calm down a bit. But again, a wonderful set of lads, staff, really, really fond memories. We went 47, you might have to correct me, I think it was 47 games unbeaten in League One over the course of 2 seasons. But we lost to blown away by Peterborough in the first playoff final. And the next year we got promoted. And there's, before you bring it up, I'll tell the story. We're playing Sheffield United final at Wembley. But 2 or 3 days before, I'd been playing, my knee injury had come back, and I was playing with a swollen knee, and I should not have been playing. I definitely should not have been playing. But again, I was the hit man, the target man. I'm going to have to start on the bench and come on, So, and I was earning good money, and there was no way I was going to say I'm not playing. But my knee was huge, and we were practicing penalties a couple of days beforehand. And I said, I was a penalty taker at Ipswich, as you know. I've no, didn't bother me. I just thought, you know what? If I have a penalty, I don't feel right. I don't fancy it. I just don't. I've never had this feeling before. So we go to Wembley. It's the hottest day ever. And there's not one element of that day anyone enjoyed. You know, the game was awful. The pitch was 100. You know, it was really, really the hottest conditions ever played in. The fans were tense. Anyway, long story short, cuts to penalties. Tommy Miller, who you'd bank on scoring, missed. They scored. Damien Johnson, another steady character, missed. They scored. Some bizarre logic came over me that I've never seen 3 misses in a row. So I'm going to score this now. You know, all I have to do is hit the target. So I hit a really bad penalty in a save, and all they have to do is score one of the next 3. So sure enough, they missed the next 3. We score the next 2. And so I'm sitting there, we're out by the halfway line. I'm thinking, oh, I'm out of jail here. Do you know what I mean? I think we're going to win it now. And it goes to the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th penalties. And then I start thinking, Christ, I'm going to have to take one again. That's the last thing I want to do. But it went down to the goalkeepers. Our keeper scored, their keeper missed. And it was, absolutely astonishing events. But again, really fond memories. And I had another year in the championship the next year where, again, at that stage, as a player, people say things like, oh, you lose your legs. Or and people don't really understand what that means. And you probably don't understand it yourself, because, so as it turns out, and what I found out like 2 years later, I had quite bad arthritis in both hips and my knee. But there's a reason why you don't lose that desire, but you just lose that athletic ability to keep going on training. And you need to train, you need to keep training. And you kind of, so the next season, I didn't start many games, but I really understood what I was doing. I was a great target man. I scored or set up, created so many goals just by using my presence and using my brain. So, I left a bit disappointing terms. I was meant to have another year or split my last year into 2. And Mark Robbins, I kind of left on a bitter. Mark Robbins, who's a friend, took over from Simon Grayson towards the end of my last season. And the next game, we'd just beaten Leicester in the Cup. Started the next game, and then he dropped me from the squad. I think we'd won a couple of games, and he dropped me from the squad and said, listen, you won't be required next year, and your services won't be required. So, we're going to go with some other people. So I said, okay. But the chairman's already told me he wants me to stop my contract now and pay me the same, pay me less over 2 years. It won't cost the club anything. But he'd like to have me around. He goes, well, that's, I think, that won't work for us. I think you best go. So I said, okay. Bit disappointed. I played with Mark and, I was a really good presence. But then they started losing some games. So I get a phone call one night and it's Mark. He goes, listen, Alan, I think I've made a bit of a mistake. I think I need your help here. You need to come back in, get the lads going for me. We need that target man. So I need you to come back and start being yourself. And I said, Mark, since the day you said that to me, I've been in training every day before you, and I've stayed longer than everyone else, and I've been the same person. Nothing has changed with me. Absolutely nothing. I'd never be like that. And he said, great, well, we'll sort out the next year. So I came back, I was involved. We had a good end to the season. We stayed up. Next day he told me, listen, chairman doesn't want you to stay another year, so that's it. And I just thought, it was horrible, absolutely horrible. So literally, I told my wife, we just had our first kid. My dad was living in our home in Dedham, but he was actually dying. And I said, let's go home. Let's, feck football. Let's just go home. We'll live with your mum. And we did that, came down to Suffolk. And it was a sad ending to Huddersfield because I deserved better, to be treated better and more respectfully. But the more I see of it, that's the game. People can't have someone like me who's potentially more knowledgeable than them and is better than people with them around the club. So that was disappointing. But what was really nice was I went into Ipswich to do my coaching hours, and it was probably early August, and Mick McCarthy was there one evening, and I was coaching some young lads. I was very raw, and I went over to thank Mick McCarthy for letting me come in, and I think he appreciated that and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, it looks like I'm retired." And he goes, "Well, have you been keeping fit?" And I lied and said I had. And he said, "Well, come in and train and play in a 23s game, because we might just like someone like you around the place." So I did that, scored in the 23s game, and signed on as just on coach's wages, very basic wages. But I trained every day with the first team, did a bit of coaching or learning a bit of coaching or watched a bit of coaching, and it was brilliant. So Mick McCarthy gave me so much belief back in there's good people in the game.
Obviously, this is now the penultimate show, boys. Just before the final episode with Dele Adebola. We've been after him all this time. I don't know how many episodes we've done now, boys, but Al, did you ever play alongside Dele Adebola? Two players of similar ilk?
I didn't. No, I played against him though.
Good player.
Yeah, it's. I mean, we're not creating those number 9s. Those. Everyone's looking for them. If you're a number 9 now with Dele's attributes or my attributes, you're hot property, because every team that were barring Man City, well, even every team in the world, when they need a goal, they have to go a bit more direct. So I think academies aren't producing them, and they're not recognised for what they are. But there's still the need for them. So
completely agree. I think the last one I'd probably say that I can remember made an impact was probably Ricky Lambert at Southampton. I think he's burying goals in the Championship, went into the Premier League, got an England cap.
Yeah.
They're just not coming through anymore. Completely agree. So at some point, there's going to be that need for a striker out. You better give him some coaching, mate.
Yeah, don't worry. Listen, football goes in cycles. So at the moment, everyone's going, right, we'll play this way and we'll try and do it the Man City, and then someone cottons on, actually, this isn't working. If we book the trend, we'll go the other way, and then everyone will go the other trend. Again, it's a lack of understanding of, the reality, how to affect a football game, what's good football. And I think particularly, if you look at the FA, there's such a lack of experience in with the decision makers. But it'll change. It always does.
I'm looking forward to that. Well, Al, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, mate. Many fond memories of you playing in the blue shirt for Ipswich Town. All the best in whatever you get up to, obviously with your financial advisor exams as well. Hope that all goes well. All right, mate?
Thank you very much. Listen, a big shout out to all the Ipswich fans. Joey, well, listen, I love living here in Suffolk. I'm right amongst you all. It ended a little bit bitterly and sorry about going to Norwich, but whenever I meet anyone in the street, they're absolutely brilliant. It's funny, no one's ever criticised me to my face. But maybe that's because I'm as aggressive as I am on the pitch. So
brilliant. Now, cheers for that, mate. Make sure you take care. All right. Cheers, buddy.
Take care. Bye bye.
Cheers. Thank you.